Tonight, America taken by storm. That vicious weather continues its cross-country tour, making travel hazardous or impossible in some places. And it's not over yet. I'm Katie Couric. Also tonight, the Senate moves closer to agreement on health care, but it may come without the public option many Democrats wanted. A child in desperate need of a heart transplant and the experimental device that kept her alive until a donor was found.
There's not a day that goes by that I don't tell all three of my kids that I love them.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Good evening, everyone. We're beginning tonight with that monster storm that's been making its way across the country and making life miserable for millions of Americans. It started in the west, moved next into the nation's midsection before heading overnight into the northeast. In some places, snow and wind combined to create whiteout conditions, making travel very dangerous. Utility crews have been working overtime to restore power to more than 100,000 homes and businesses, and many people had to dig their way out of their driveways or into their cars. National correspondent Dean Reynolds is in Chicago tonight, and Dean, shoveling was no easy feat today.
No, it was not, Katie, and that's because over much of the country today they were measuring snowfalls in feet instead of inches, and more snow is obviously on the way.
With gale-force winds, plummeting temperatures, and drifting snow, this massive storm is pounding the Midwest. But it's leaving a wide, white footprint all the way from Idlewild, California, to Sparta, New Jersey, and most parts in between. And it has been a deadly passage. At least 12 fatalities have been tied to weather-related accidents so far. Hundreds of mishaps were reported across the storm-tossed countryside. As the storm barreled eastward on 50-mile-an-hour winds, schools by the hundreds were closed from Kansas to the Dakotas to Ohio and beyond. Driving through Iowa was impossible because highways were impassable. Hundreds of motorists were stranded for hours, and plows were actually pulled off the roads when drifts got too big. One trucker spoke for many.
How you doing up there?
Be doing better if I could get going.
In Illinois, 15% of the corn crop is wilting under a layer of snow and may be lost.
Cold is fine. We can do that. It's when we get the snow on the corn is when the problem is.
In Madison, government workers were told to stay home. The University of Wisconsin, buried in 19 inches of snow, canceled classes for the first time in almost 2 decades. At South Haven, Michigan, gigantic Lake Michigan waves gave the lighthouse a beating. As far away as Nashville, the wind blew down the Tennessee State Christmas tree, and the heavy, wet snow made the morning commute in Worcester, Mass. a mess. Cancellations dotted airport boards again.
Airlines have cut capacity by 10% over the past year, so there's no wiggle room to fix things. So a huge storm can really knock travelers out of the loop for a good 2 to 3, sometimes even 4 days.
For those who stayed put, millions spent the day digging out.
It's not just a lot of snow, it's very heavy snow, so it takes a while to push it.
And it's wet and it's heavy, so I'll probably have to go to the hospital tonight.
And the National Weather Service says that by the time this storm moves off the coast of Maine tomorrow night, it may well have affected as much as 2/3 of this country. Katie?
As you said, Dean, what a mess. Thanks very much. As the storm moved through the upper Midwest, it left not only snow but frigid temperatures as well. In Minneapolis, the wind chill today made it feel like it was 10 below zero. CBS Early Show weather anchor Dave Price is in nearby Bloomington tonight. Dave, I know this storm set records for low temperatures across 5 western states, and now it's hitting parts of the East Coast. What made this so huge?
Well, the storm has affected much of the country. It cut a huge swath. It is huge in scope and impact, Katie, but it started out as a typical winter storm, but a powerful combination of bitter cold Arctic air and lots of moisture energized it. Now the jet stream has further intensified the storm as it's moved all the way from California to the eastern seaboard at a pace of almost 60 miles per hour. And what's left now looks like a question mark on the weather map, stretching from the upper Midwest through to New England and down the eastern seaboard.
And Dave, tomorrow will be the 4th day of this storm. What can we expect then?
Well, the storm is moving to the northeast up into Canada, but cold winds on the back edge of this system are going to roll across the Great Lakes, and they'll pick up even more moisture. Then they're going to dump it on the eastern shores in the form of lake effect snow. And from Grand Rapids, Michigan to Erie, Pennsylvania, and onward to Buffalo, New York, if you're there, you may find yourself under 1 to 2 feet of snow before the week is over and the storm is finally gone. It's not quite over yet. Katie?
All right, Dave Price. Dave, thanks so much, and I'm glad you're wearing your earmuffs tonight.
You bet.
All right, and now turning to politics and specifically President Obama. As he tackles a world of difficult issues, his poll numbers are dropping. And a CBS News New York Times poll out tonight, 50% of Americans say they approve the job he's doing. Now, that's the lowest rating since he took office. And 50% disapprove of his handling of health care reform. On that matter, our poll found 59% of Americans favor a government-run plan, the so-called public option. But congressional correspondent Nancy Cordes tells us in the Senate, the public option has been putting health care reform in jeopardy. So the only option may be to kill it.
We have a broad agreement.
Democratic leaders called it a breakthrough, a tentative deal with moderates that might allow them to scrap the contentious public option while preserving its twin aims of covering the uninsured and forcing insurers to lower premiums.
It takes the best of both worlds.
The deal, according to negotiators, includes 2 new proposals. First, a nonprofit national insurance plan. Unlike the public option, this coverage would be provided by private insurers, but the government would negotiate the rates, the same way it already does for 8 million federal employees, including members of Congress.
Obviously, there's great competition. As a result, you get better rates and you get better service.
The second proposal would allow some Americans ages 55 to 64 to buy in early to Medicare.
It is designed to help early retirees, people who don't have coverage through their jobs, but who actually are most likely to have some kind of a health care problem.
But it's unclear how affordable the premiums would really be for this new age group. A recent congressional analysis found that allowing Americans ages 62 to 64 to buy into Medicare would require them to pay $630 a month. And as Republicans point out, Medicare is already on the brink of insolvency.
The last thing you want to think about when the Titanic is sinking is put grandma and more of your family on the boat.
The president, eager to sign a bill, praised the alternatives today, but many Democrats are withholding their support until the Congressional Budget Office can determine how much all this will cost. And without those Democrats, Katie, there's no bill.
All right, Nancy Cordes on Capitol Hill tonight. Nancy, thank you. Now, one reason there is so much concern about the cost of health care is that the economy is still struggling. In our poll tonight, 77% of Americans told us they think the economy is in bad shape. But what about that stimulus package that was supposed to jumpstart it? Only $217 billion of the $787 billion package has been spent so far. And now 2 prominent Republicans are saying at least 15% of that was wasted. Cheryl Atkinson follows the money.
You probably wouldn't guess that a martini bar and a Brazilian steakhouse would be on tap for stimulus funds. But in St. Joseph, Missouri, the 2 privately owned facilities are getting $100,000 of your tax dollars. The idea, their success will revitalize the area. But to Senators John McCain and Tom Coburn, it's a glaring example of stimulus spending that ranges from wasteful to silly and short-sighted.
The American people have to realize that the priorities ought to be what creates the most job and what gives the best value to the American people.
In a new report, the senators tag 100 stimulus projects worth $7 billion. A water pipeline to a money-losing golf course in San Francisco, fossil research in Argentina, puppet shows and clown theater. There's money for people to keep journals of their malt liquor and marijuana use, to study the hookup behavior of college co-eds. And this.
The QSST.
$4.7 million to Lockheed Martin to develop supersonic jet travel, catering to upscale clientele.
The comfort and elegance of an executive aircraft.
We're also spending a lot to learn from the animal kingdom, cooperation from birds, the sex drive of rats on hard drugs, the caste system and division of labor in ants. The Obama administration stimulus spokesman says even if there are a few unwise projects, it's only a handful out of the over 50,000 projects approved to date. The administration has become increasingly sensitive to appearances. A case in point is the $9 million plan for a footbridge over Route 1 in Foxborough, Massachusetts. The governor and his staff made the astonishing claim the footbridge could create 8,000 jobs by enticing a major development.
We're looking at it as a major corporate or R&D park.
But with no imminent prospects, the head of state stimulus oversight said the only one sure to benefit is the billionaire who owns the parking lots, mall, and stadium on both sides of the road.
This is a waste of public funds. There are a lot more projects that need attention and need public dollars.
Just last Friday, after federal officials voiced concern, the state yanked the stimulus funds, saying the project wasn't ready to go. You're still picking up the tab to renovate that martini bar in Missouri. If it's any consolation, they're offering $2 off martinis. Think of it as a taxpayer rebate. Cheryl Atkinson, CBS News, Washington.
And one more note about your tax dollars. The Bank of America said today it has now paid back all of the $45 billion in so-called TARP funds given to the bank to stay afloat. So of the $453 billion in bailout money handed out to financial institutions and the auto industry, $116 billion has now been returned. And coming up next on the CBS Evening News, 5 U.S. citizens arrested in Pakistan. Were they linking up with terrorists? In eastern Pakistan, 5 U.S. citizens were arrested in a raid today. Authorities there are investigating whether the Americans intended to join a terrorist group. Justice correspondent Bob Orr is following the case.
Law enforcement sources say Howard University dental student Rami Zamzam and 4 other Muslim American friends left Washington 2 weeks ago, telling their families they were taking a trip. Today, 5 men matching their descriptions were detained by police in Pakistan, inside the home of a suspected terrorist. Sources say weapons and explosives were also recovered in the house. The FBI had been searching for the missing Washington men for more than a week after family members and Muslim community leaders raised concerns. Officials do not believe they attended any terror training camp, and sources say it's premature to conclude they had any terrorist intentions. But Zamzam left behind a video showing American casualties with a message proclaiming Muslims must be defended.
The video is about 11 minutes, and it's like a farewell.
Zamzam, who once headed a Muslim student group, worshipped at this Alexandria, Virginia mosque. Terror analysts say his case may be the latest example of U.S. citizens and residents reaching directly to international terror organizations. Denver shuttle driver Najibullah Zazi, accused of plotting to attack the New York subways, allegedly trained in a Pakistan camp with a top al-Qaeda henchman. Chicagoan David Headley, who was arraigned today in Illinois, is charged with scouting the targets that Lashkar-e-Taiba attacked in the Mumbai massacre. And 24 American Somalis, most from Minneapolis, have recently left the U.S. to fight alongside the terror group al-Shabaab in Somalia.
The dangerous elixir here is that you have Americans radicalized reaching out to known terrorist organizations and going to fight and get trained, but potentially coming back into the homeland.
Now, in this latest case, the FBI says there's no evidence at all of a crime or any developing plot. But U.S. agents have not yet had direct contact with the Americans still being held in Pakistan. Katie?
Bob Orr. Bob, thanks very much. Now, a follow-up on that embarrassing security breach we told you about last night. A secret manual that tells airport screeners how to do their jobs had somehow ended up online. The guide could help potential terrorists sidestep security. Today, 5 TSA employees were placed on administrative leave. And still ahead, some say it's proof the Earth is not warming up. We'll look at the gathering storm over ClimateGate. President Obama will be spending a lot of time on Air Force One. He's flying tonight to Oslo, where he'll accept the Nobel Peace Prize tomorrow. He returns home on Friday, but next week it's back to Scandinavia for the climate conference in Copenhagen. The U.S. and China squared off there today, each accusing the other of failing to cut greenhouse gases. And Wyatt Andrews tells us the entire conference is taking place under a cloud that's become known as ClimateGate.
To anyone skeptical about the science of global warming,
ClimateGate.
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 ClimateGate is the biggest scandal ever.
They're just cooking the books.
ClimateGate is the term being used for a handful of emails stolen last month from the influential CRU, the Climatic Research Unit in England. By far, the most embarrassing email is from 1999, in which CRU's director, Phil Jones, brags that he's used a trick to hide the decline. Hide the decline meaning hiding studies from tree rings that show the Earth cooling since 1960, when actual temperatures show a trend toward warming. The phrase, hide the decline, is now so infamous it's being spoofed on YouTube. Hide the decline. And the fact that global temperatures have gone down in some years was in other emails, with one scientist lamenting, "We can't account for the lack of warming at the moment, and it is a travesty that we can't." To many Republicans, ClimateGate proves that global warming is a deception.
And at worst, it's junk science, and it is a part of a massive international scientific fraud.
But if that's true, it's a fraud adopted by most of the world's leading scientists, along with NASA, the UN, the American Medical Association, and the National Academies of Science of 32 countries, including the United States. To most of them, ClimateGate is a sideshow compared to one overwhelming fact.
The last decade is the warmest decade on record.
Michael Mann is the professor who's being lampooned in that YouTube video. Mann says hide the decline was never an attempt to deceive. It was the use of real temperatures to show a real trend.
Those who deny the existence of this problem, who don't have the science on their side, have instead engaged in a smear campaign to distract the public, to distract policymakers.
ClimateGate advocates do want political traction. They hope any uncertainty over man-made global warming might change the president's plan to offer CO2 cuts in Copenhagen next week. Wyatt Andrews, CBS News, Washington.
And coming up next, the story of a father's love and the experimental device that saved his daughter's life. We end tonight with matters of the heart. Nearly 3,000 Americans are waiting for a heart transplant, including more than 200 children. For them, there's new hope. CNN's Dr. Sanjay Gupta, CBS News contributor, has tonight's Eye on Your Health.
A year and a half ago, Charles Tillman had the life he always dreamed of. On the football field, a star defensive back with the Chicago Bears. At home, a proud parent with his wife Jackie to Talia, and their 3-month-old baby, Tiana.
She was essentially, like most parents would say, the perfect child.
But everything changed one day at practice.
And coach, he comes over to me and says, "Hey, Tiana's sick, Jack's taken her to the hospital, you need to go."
Tiana had been fighting what everyone thought was a cold. It turned out, though, that her heart was failing. The doctor's grim prognosis hit harder than any tackle on the football field.
You might want to call somebody because she might not make it through the night.
To say their goodbyes.
To say their goodbyes. She's very sick.
The only hope for Tiana, a heart transplant. And to keep her alive until a donor was found, doctors suggested an experimental device, the Berlin heart. It's not FDA approved. You say what?
I say give it to me. I don't care.
The Berlin heart has been used more than 160 times in the United States since 2000. And each time, doctors have to get permission from the FDA and have it flown in from Germany. Here's how it works. The device takes over the heart's work of pumping blood. Tubes are implanted inside the heart, and they emerge from small openings in the skin to enter the pump, which sends blood directly to the blood vessels that go to the rest of the body.
We're not only supporting the heart, we're supporting all the vital organs and keeping the patient in the best possible condition so that when a heart does come available, that they can be successfully transplanted.
Dr. Charles Frazier is running a clinical trial of the Berlin heart. If the device is approved, He believes it could improve the chances for hundreds of children who wait for transplants.
These are children who are otherwise normal. They look normal, their pump has failed. You should be able to provide for those children something to save their lives.
This is Tiana today, a rambunctious toddler with a bright future and a new baby brother. After a few days on the Berlin Heart,
you want me to go again?
She received a heart transplant 16 months ago. Charles has many mementos from his career in football, but nothing compares to this.
There it is.
It's the actual Berlin Heart that helped Tiana. He says the experience changed him.
God, family, football, just in that order. There's not a day that goes by that I don't tell all three of my kids that I love them, tell my wife that I love her, and just really appreciate the time and the moment.
Charles continues to be a star in the violent world of professional football, but Tiana's inspired him to try a new position as a spokesman for organ donation and the technology that saved her life. Dr. Sanjay Gupta, CBS News, Chicago.
And to learn more about the Texas Children's Hospital and the Tillman's Foundation, you can go to cbsnews.com. And that is the CBS Evening News for tonight. I'm Katie Couric. Thank you for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.